We are now in Perek Mem Zayin of Sefer Yeshayahu, chapter 47, back in the right order as we're supposed to be. And what happens here in this Perek is it describes once again the downfall of Bavel. Now, we've actually dealt with the downfall of Bavel two other times in the first half of Sefer Yeshayahu. First in Perek Yud Gimel, which was the Masa Bavel, where there was, if you remember, a series of prakim that dealt with the downfall of various enemies. And then in Perek Chaf Aleph in 21, where we talked about Masa Midbar Yam, which we said also might refer, according to most of the Meforshim, refer to Bavel as well. And here, according to some, the reason why it goes into this depth once more is not only because it fits into this whole piece, where we had talked about the rise of Koresh, of Cyrus, who would defeat, he and Darius the Mede, Daryavish, Madai, they would defeat the Babylonians, but also because of the fact that Bavel was so evil and so destructive that the Navi may want to just keep on talking about how bad they're going to be punished for all of this. And there are three parts to the parak. The first part is going to talk about their disgrace. You'll see right away the disgrace that's going to happen to them. Then it's going to talk about that this disgrace and these punishments are a result of what they had done to the Jewish people. And then finally, it's going to have one last unusual piece, to the last few psukim, where it's going to say that all of their magicians are not going to be able to help them. If you think back to Mitzrayim, the idea of the magicians were trying to help Paro. At some point, they just said they can't do it anymore. Well, here the magicians are not going to necessarily admit to it, but the Navi is going to say, hey, this doesn't work anymore. So it starts right at the beginning, and it's immediately, you see what's happening. Immediately, the Navi says to the princess of Bavel. Okay, this Betulat bat Bavel is another way of saying the princess. It's the Ibn Ezra says the reason we refer to her as the Betula, as the Virgin of Bavel, is because that there were never any moments that she had ever experienced defeat in the past. There'd never been any blood until this point, which Rav Schwab points out as well. They'd never been captured before. So this great nation, the Betulat Bat Bavel, go down. Now, what it means, go down, the Malbim says very simply, sit on the ground like a person in mourning. And in fact, Shavi la'aretz en kisei bat kastim. Sit on the ground en kisei. Rashi says you no longer have a throne on which to sit. The Ibn Ezra goes a step further. You will never have a throne. It will never be leolam. You'll never have this throne to sit upon. Kilo tosifi krulach rakav anuga. They're never going to be referring to you as the delicate and the anuga, best way of saying it in English actually is probably spoiled one. You're never going to have pampered. I like that better. You're never going to have that opportunities that you had when you were on top. The Malbim says, listen, when it talks about delicate, that talks about an innate piece of the person's personality. Whereas when you talk about anuga, you're talking about via the way she has been treated. In other words, Bavel, you're never going to rise to that greatness, or as Shadal says, you're never going to have that wealth and those riches which you seem to just come by naturally without anything else stopping you. So the Navi tells her, now you got to get a real job. Okay, take your millstone and start grinding the wheat in order to get flour out of it. Now, a grindstone, if you remember, and maybe you don't remember, grindstone, there are two stones, one on top of the other. And what happens, the bottom stone stays in place. The top stone is turned around. Between the two stones, there's a hole. Between the two stones, the kernels are placed, and you schlep it around. And there are a number of different sizes of these things. They're the kinds that have to be schlepped around by animals. They're the kinds which are just moved around by a person. They're the smaller grinders. It is backbreaking work, and it's not work that normally someone of prominence would ever do. It's actually the work of servants that they would take care of, which is what the Mahari Kraus says. It's avdi kishivcha, start working like a maid servant would do. Gali tzamatech chashpi sovel shovel galishok ivrina harot. And then it's the Navi says, listen, you were in all of this finery before. your life is changing. Remove your veil. Samatech could be a veil. That's the simplest one. The Ibn Ezra says it actually refers to a person's bangs. It was a style which they would, how they would dress. Both of them, in other words, it's a way that it's their royal garb that they would wear, the headdresses that they would wear. At the very same sense, we have gali samatech. In other words, remove that headdress. Cheshpim shovel gali shok. Now go ahead and lift up, uncover your foot. Now, why is a shovel mean foot? Comes from the same shorish as shvil, as a road. You walk on a road, and that which you walk with is your feet. And that's why it's called that. At the same time, what it's talking about is you're going to have to walk a lot. And I don't know this experience, but I've seen it when women in long dresses are walking, they lift up their skirt a little bit to be able so they don't trip on them. That's the first step. But gali shok, Ivrina Harot, means you're going to be traveling far. You're going to be going across the rivers into exile. You're going to be moved out of your places. And at that point, you're going to need to lift up your dress all the way, because that's the only way you'll make it across as a servant.
A bride's veil is actually called a shoval.
Okay, but a shoval here is not a veil. The tzamatech is the veil. A shoval here comes from the word shvil. Tigal ervatech. At this point, it's going even further. Reveal your erva, your private places. It's the utter degradation. Schwab talks about the utter degradation of the once proud and pampered Bavel. And in fact, gam tera'echer patech, also your shame will be seen. It's going to be something that is seen to all. Nakam ekach v'lo efgai adam. I'm going to take vengeance, and no person will be able to ask for help in this kind of case. Now, there's a machloket here between the Meforshim and Akamekach v'lo efga adam. What does it mean v'lo efga adam? No one's going to come forward. So first of all, the simplest explanation, remember, vayifgaba makomahu, in the Chumash we talk about as a form of tefillah. Giyah is a form of tefillah. So the Mitzudat Zion says no one will pray on your behalf, is the way he would translate. V'lo efga adam, no one will pray on your behalf. The Ibn Ezra takes it a little differently. No one's going to seek appeasement, to try to find some kind of middle ground. However, Rashi says, "V'lo efga adam" means God is not going to seek a person to create this vengeance. He will do it himself. This kind of vengeance is going to happen. I don't need anyone to help me in demeaning, degrading Bavel, punishing Bavel. Lo efga in that kind of case literally means to meet with them. So there's two different ways of looking on it. And the Navi continues, Go aleinu Hashem tzvakot shemo kedosh Yisrael. All of a sudden changing the audience. Until now, the first three psukim, the Navi is talking directly to Bavel. You're going to be a mess. I'm going to take you down, literally take you down. You're going to be degraded and debased. And now the Navi turns to Bnei Yisrael. He speaks to Bnei Yisrael directly, and he says, Go aleinu Hashem tzvakot shemo. And he says, our Redeemer is Hashem Tzvakot. Who's the one who did this, all of this? Hashem Tzvakot. And he is the Kedosh Shemo, Kedosh Yisrael. He is the Kedosh Yisrael because, as the Radak says, via this punishment and via the redemption of the Jewish people, everyone will see the sanctity of God's name in Bavel. God's name will be revealed. In other words, they'll see the power. It's very similar, if you think about it, to what happened at the time of the Geulah, of the redemption of Mitzrayim. That among the reasons for the Makot were that the rest of the world, first the Egyptians and the world, will see God in the world. That sometimes when these extraordinary changes occur, and you see what's happening to the Jewish people, when the Jewish people rise up, you see the power of God in that rising up as well. Pasuk Hey now turns back to the Babylonians, and it says very simply, Shvi dumam uvoi vachoshech bat kasdim. Sit silent and come into the darkness. Now, the Radak in his explanation basically says, I don't want to hear you and I don't want to see you anymore. That's the way it goes. You sit quietly and sit in a place where people aren't going to see you anymore. Says the Mitzudat David, this actually is sitting quietly and sitting in darkness is actually referring to a way of mourning. A person who's in mourning is sitting on the ground. They don't speak. Okay, a person, especially a person who's been pushed away in the zifa or cherem, in a form of excommunication, you don't even talk to the person in that kind of case, and they sit quietly. There's nothing to do. The Abarbanel says, sit in darkness means sit alone. You're going to be by yourself. Kilo tosifi yikru'ulach geveret mamlechot. Because you'll no longer have the great title of the Geveret Mamlachot. Geveret Mamlachot means the mistress over the nations. Mitzudat David says this is very simply the one who rules over others. The Dat Mikra says Geveret Mamlachot is like the top title. You have a king, you have a queen, and you have the one who's above them even. Bavel, you had risen to that greatness. Your empire had conquered most of the world at the time. You're no longer going to have that anymore. Katsafti alami. Kodesh Baruch Hu says to Babel, listen, I was angry with my people. Chilalti nachalati. I degraded my inheritance. Vetnem yadech. I gave them to you, Bavel. In other words, they were punished. The Jews deserved punishment. They were going to be punished by you. The Shadal points out, Ami nachalati. Both of them are obviously talking, my nation, my inheritance, are both talking about the Jews. So what's the difference? Ami is just the collective, the collection of the Jewish people. Ami comes from the same word as im, with. Okay, there's a collection. Nachalati is a step beyond. That nachalati is hachavivli. There's a sign of belovedness. It's not just the people who are there together, but the people who define who I am. My inheritance, what I give to somebody else, is part of who I am. So God says, my nation, my people, the people who I have granted all of these things to be the greatness that they were of the Jewish people, both of them, that two parts have sinned. I gave to you, Bavel. I gave over to you, lo samt lahem rachamim. But you showed no mercy. Al zakein hichbadet ulech meod. Not only did you show no mercy, what you did, and Rav Schwab points this out, the older a person was, or the more elderly a person was, the more difficult the work that was assigned to them. Again, think back to the Medrash talking about the Egyptian enslavement, that they gave the backbreaking work to the women, and they gave the women's work to the men. That they tried every way they could do, also backbreaking, but they tried every way they could to degrade the people through the work that they were doing. It wasn't just that it was hard, it was a degrading effort. And that's the very same thing that the Navi says about Bavel. He curses out Bavel for that purpose. V'tomri le'olama yegveret, you said to yourself, I'm always going to be in charge. Ad lo samt ela alibech, you never paid attention. Now, what didn't you pay attention? So there's a disagreement. The Rebbe Avigdor Belgansi, he says, Lo samt ela al libech, you never thought of the consequences. You never thought of the punishment that you would incur by having been so vicious, so achzar against the Jewish people. The Dat Mikra disagrees, and the Dat Mikra says, Lo samt ela alibech, you didn't even pay attention to how cruel you were being. Lo zachart achritan. You never remembered in this kind of case what's going to be, that at the end of the days, okay, how you're going to be repaid when the Jews are going to be redeemed. Yeah, Leah.
So do the guardians really, if they thought of the consequences, do they acknowledge that there is a God who's going to protect?
So that's, listen, whether you acknowledge God or not, you have a responsibility to, God is able to call it responsibility. There's a complete side note, by the way. One of the reasons why we generally don't invite non-Jews to a Seder on Pesach is that phrase. Okay, how can you invite a non-Jew and say, pour out your fury, your wrath against the non-Jews?
But you say, I should look.
As who didn't know you, but the reality, Asher lo yidaucha, doesn't mean doesn't know you, but doesn't understand or doesn't recognize, is probably a better way of yidaucha, because if they really didn't know, then they can't be held responsible. Okay, yeah.
Why, when if Hashem, right, himself, Katzafti alamim, Hilalti etnem beyadech.
Right.
So why are you punished? If Hashem does not show up,
So,
why would they?
so we go back to that same piece, and I'm going to go back to Mitzrayim again. There's the famous midrash that Paro goes up to Shemayim. Okay, this is the midrash that says he was killed at Yam Suf. Goes up to Shemayim and he said, "I was doing your task." And HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, because you said, they said, they're going to be enslaved. Hey, I fulfilled your task. At that point, HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, who said it had to be you? Okay. Here, I gave them to you. They were going to be punished. They were taken out into exile. But what happens to them in exile didn't have to be what you did to them. You went above and beyond. Your level of cruelty was more. Look, to be politically correct or incorrect, I'm not sure how to look at it. Okay, we are in exile in the United States. We're in exile, and being in exile is a punishment from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Okay, not that we feel that punishment. This is the most magnificent exile that has ever existed, diaspora that has ever existed for the Jewish people, is the one in America today, greater than all of the other great eras of Jewish life. So, you can be in exile and you can have freedoms. You can be in exile and you can have less. You can be in exile and be enslaved. So he's being punished for the enslavement.
It's not Katzafti.
I got it. They were going to. Katzafti means I am angry. Okay, I got angry. And what happened to the Jews? Their Beit HaMikdash was destroyed. They were exiled from their land. Okay, and all of that happened. But who said you had to go that next step? Now, just by the way, almost take it a different way, ignoring us for a moment, because that will make us feel a little bit better. But if you just think about the later eras of Bavel, where you had a golden age, where the Gemara was created and where the Gaonim lived, the great yeshivot of Bavel were there. This is not that period. This is an earlier period. Al Narod Bavel Sham Yashavnu V'Gam Bachinu. Okay, they were crying, they were enslaved, and so Katzafti, I punished them, but you didn't have to go that far. Who said you had to go that far? So that's I think where we go. Ve'atam shimi zot adina yoshevet levetach. And now you listen to this. The one who is sitting so comfortable and so safe. Ha'omra b'levava. Ani va'afsi od, who's saying to herself, I am no one else. Lo eshev almana v'lo edash kol. And you, but this is going back to the Betulat Bavel, you are going back and you're saying, I'm never going to be a widow. My children will never be taken away from me. The Radak says, what do you mean widow in Shikul? Shikul, by the way, we know that a person who loses a child, there's a title for the parent, it's a Shikul. Okay, in Israel, unfortunately, it's a term that's used all the time. It comes from the Tanakh. What's fascinating, there's no equivalent word in English for it. Okay, a parent who loses a child loses a parent is called an orphan. What's the opposite called in English? There's no word for it. Okay, in Hebrew, there's a word for it. It may be, by the way, that in Hebrew, because we needed a word for it. It was something that we've experienced over the generations. The Radak says in Almanah, what does it mean? I will never sit as a widow. It means I'm never going to be without a king. Shikul, says the Radak, I'm never going to be without my nation. Says the Mahakrikra, I never thought that I would suffer such defeat that there will be so many widows and so many families without their children. Never imagined something that would ever happen like that. But And both things happen at the very same time. What do you mean both things happen at the same time? The Meforshim explain at the night when Belshazzar was killed, that very same night, that's the night that Paras Madai overthrew Bavel. And there's a medrash. The medrash comes from Shir Hashirim. I'm just going to read it to you, a piece of it, Shir Hashirim Rabbah. It comes from Perek 3, number 4. Koresh v'Daryavesh shoarin shel Belshazzar. It says that Cyrus and Darius were the gatekeepers. They were the guards for Belshazzar. Huh? Inside job. V'kevan sheshamak tuvim halalu. And when they heard these psukim, this is talking about the writing on the wall at the time of Daniel. Amarlon kol man demitchame hachalalia haden afilu du amar lechon da'anahu malka arimim lereshe. Said Belshazzar, anybody who tries to get into the doors tonight, anyone, even if he says to you, I am the king, cut off his head. But there was a little problem, okay? That unfortunately, the outhouses for kings were not kept in the homes. They were at a distance. And what are you going to do? Unfortunately, need tot through me'av koloto alayla. Belshazzar had to really go all night. And he went outside of the palace to relieve himself, but Koresh and Daryavesh didn't see him. But when he was trying to get back into the palace, they saw him. They said, who are you? No, Malka. Belshazzar said, I'm the king. Amri, so they said to him, Velav Kain Pakid Malka, but didn't the king command us, the Cholman? Then afilu amar lechon da'anahu malka arimun reshe. Didn't the king tell us, anyone who you see this night, even if he claims to be the king, we have to cut off his head? Masu natlu pirchashel menoram ufatzu et menoram. So they took one of the branches of the candelabrum that was available, they hit him over his head and killed him. And that's the meaning of the pasuk in Daniel, which says, on that night, Belshazzar was killed. Now, historically, this story has a lot of issues. Why would Cyrus and Darius, the leaders of Persia and Mede, why would they be gatekeepers? Okay, so to take the medrash at its simplest explanation is complicated. But what the Medrash is explaining, what Chazal felt, was that all of these things played a part. And according to other sources in Chazal, Belshazzar, after he saw, he was the last king of the Babylonians, after he saw that vision and after it was explained to him by Daniel, remember he shuddered when they all shuddered when they saw it, that they didn't understand it, that evening he was killed by some of his inside people. And at that very same time is when Cyrus and Darius the Mede were about to conquer the land, and they took advantage of that political upheaval and took over the land. And so when he says here, "V'tavona lach shtei eila regel b'yom echad, shchol v'almon," you're going to have both of these terrible things happening on the very same night. That's what the Navi is referring to. When your king is going to fall, at the very same time you're going to be overthrown. It's a double. Well, I guess the way you'd say a double whammy. Kitumam ba'u alayich berov keshafayich. They're going to come. Kitumam. Kitumam. Interestingly, Rashi says that both of these tragedies, both losing everything, will come in its fullness. The word tam can be complete, to be mut. According to the Maharikra, the word tumam is a cognate to the word te'om, double. It's missing the aleph in this version. Okay, tumam ba'alech, both of them coming together, just like twins. Berov kishafayich ba'atzmat chavarayich ma'od. And with the abundance of witchcraft and the intensity of chavarayach, which is a kind of enchanters, they're going to be there despite, says Rabbi Victor, but Mibelganse, you have all these people around you. You're playing it safe. You think you're taken care of, despite all the witchcraft, and despite all of their enchantments that they're trying to do, it's going to happen. Now, the Ibn Ezra says it's not despite. The Ibn Ezra says it's because you've placed your faith in these pagan forms of worship, that's what's going to happen. Berov kishafayich botzmat chavarayich. It doesn't say because or key, missing that one word, and how you connect that posuk, but it's going to be the simplest explanation is all of these terrible things are happening to you. You thought you were safe. You thought you were above everyone else. You're going to be brought down. You thought you would never experience the tragedy of losing your kingdom and losing all your power. It's going to happen, and it's going to happen quickly. And it's going to happen because you placed your faith in the wrong things. And in fact, v'tivtechi b'rayatech amart ein ro'ani, you have placed your faith in the wickedness. You said, no one sees me. What do you mean, no one sees me? No one sees me. According to the Rebbe Victor Belgansi, no one, I'm going to get away with it. I'm doing it secretly. No one's going to see the evil I'm doing. Okay. It could be because no one sees me, because the way magicians would operate was in secret. Or it could be that all of these things, the evil, the absolute evil itself, and this builds a little bit on the Sforno. The Rayatech means the Achzariut ve'evrat Zadon. You're so confident in the evil you're performing. No one will see, no one will be able to get to me. All of these cases, by the way, when I read this pasuk, I think about, by the way, of World War II, what happened in the Shoah. You know, the Nazis, Yimach Shemam, did not build concentration camps and death camps, with the exception of Lublin, near population centers. Majdanek was right near Lublin. Okay, the bus went right by it. The trolley went right by it. But generally, it was in the middle of nowhere. Okay, and as a result, you know, they thought we'll get away with it. And then when the war was going the wrong way, they tried to destroy everything, so no one would catch them and they wouldn't have the consequence. Here, Bavel thinks they're going to get away with it. Chochmatech v'datech hi shovavtech. He says ultimately, your wisdom and your ideas, they emboldened you. In other words, you were too smart for yourselves. You were so impetuous. The Shadal says, Asaudcha shoveva. They made you into a person who was just stubborn. A shovav today in modern Hebrew, a person as a shovav is, I always define it as Dennis the Menace. Okay, a troublemaker, you know, that kind of stuff like that. But the terminology of shovav, there it already means it's used to describe someone. Shovav, by the way, Rav Schwab says shovav should be translated as wanderer. It's a person who has lost and is wandering, lost their way. You're so smart for yourself, so you didn't know what you were doing anymore. But Tomri B'libech, you were able to fool yourself, and you were able to say that Ani v'afsi od. It's all about me. Okay, and nothing, no one else. Now, the interesting thing, the Radak also talks about what was, according to the Radak, chokhmatech v'datech. He says, ultimately, this is all of the wisdom you had. All of that wisdom is not necessarily, he refers to it as chokhmot chitzoniyot, shayu becha. Okay. That all of your foreign wisdom that you had, it's one of those pieces where sometimes you were too smart for yourselves, but it also might be that your value systems were so out of kilter in that way. Uvalayach ra'am, this evil will come unto you. Lo tedi shachra, you're not going to know the dawn. How does it say shachra in ArtScroll? The evil will come upon you, or the bad will come upon you. You will not know. What's that word in ArtScroll? Huh? Calamity? No, calamity would be ra'ah. It was fortune. Read for me the pasuk, how he does it. How does he read the English? You will not know how to pray. Okay. Okay. Not know how to pray. Good. Okay. Shachari. Okay. So good. So how to pray, what was that? How to charm your way. Okay. So Rashi says it means you don't know to whom to turn and to whom to pray, who to request the help. That's Rashi, the Metzudat David. That's the way our scroll is translating it. The Shadal says that you're not going to see the light of day. It's over, is another way of saying it. You're not going to see the Ayelet HaShachar, the first light of day that comes up. The Malbim says, Lo Teit'i Shachra, your existence is going to be in the dark. You're going to be in the dark over all of this. You're just not going to get it, what's happening. Okay. And Rav Schwab says, there is no hope that your darkness will ever end. Shachra, in other words, we find two different terminologies for Shachra. One is where you're seeking, the light you're seeking, or the other, the light that illuminates. Okay. You won't know how to get out of this, or you'll not even realize what you're in the middle of. Vatipol alayich hova, and destruction will fall upon you. Lo tuchli kapra, you're not going to have any form of atonement. V'tavo alayich pitom, and it'll come suddenly. A sho'ah lo tedai, you will have never known such destruction. This is the word sho'ah, is from here. The word Shoah. Now, to take it very simply, what's happening now is this destruction is going to happen. You're not going to get away from it, says Rashi. You're not going to be able to kapara. You're not going to be able to pay your way out of it, says Radak. Yeah. So it's interestingly, the word Hovah itself, we find Hovah being a makkah. You'll find it in for instance, Hine Yad Hashem Hoya b'miknecha, okay, which have right, okay, so it will be, and that's the source of Avah, and it's going to come. The Shoah is going to come. Now, what does it mean? The Shoah is going to come suddenly. Well, again, this, according to the Marikra, just means the destruction of Bavel. Belshazzar is going to be killed, and overnight, another monarchy is rising. You're going to have Cyrus and Darius the Mede who are conquering Bavel. It happened so quickly. That's it. Okay. According to Rabbi Victor Belgansi, what's going to happen is this destruction is going to happen. It's going to be like this whirlwind that's going to come and just cover the land. So you're going to fall faster than you could ever imagine. Imdina. And so Yeshayahu now mocks them. He says, don't worry, stand behind all of the enchanters and all of your magicians. Something that you have been working on since you were a kid. This is your faith in them has been forever. Hey, maybe they're going to be able to help you. Maybe they'll give you the strength you want. And all of this is, the Navi is mocking them because he knows, he's already told them they're not going to help at all. Nil 8, Birov Atzatayich. You're wearing yourself out, you're exerting yourself, you're tiring yourself out from all of your advisors. Now, Shadal points out, Nil 8 refers to an effort that's put forth without any benefit. You just think about, you're running on a treadmill, okay? Really good exercise, but you're not getting anywhere. You put forth effort and you don't get anywhere, that's delayed. Ya'amduna v'yoshiu ach hovrei shamayim achozim b'kochavim, and let him stand. Let him save you. The hovrei shamayim. Now, hovrei shamayim is an interesting term. Hovrei Shamayim, the Ibn Ezra says, clearly this is a word we've never seen before, Hovrei. We don't know what it is. Ein real milah zo, he says. There's no other word place in the Tanakh where this word is used. And maybe he says some people say it comes from the word from the shorish bet resh resh barar borer to select, and he says that's not possible because he says if I look at this word, the hay has to be part of the shorish itself. The Radak says it must mean those who are stargazers. The Shadal says that he says in Arabic, the word, and I don't know how to pronounce it, but havar in Arabic, hey, bet, resh in Arabic means to cut, to slice. And he says what it refers to is hovrei shemaim, those who cut the heavens or slice the heavens, those who divide the heavens into 12 parts, the zodiac, who divide it into 12 parts, who look to the sun, who look to the heavens to determine what the future is going to be. Okay, the guys who read it in the paper. Okay, huh? Well, it could be okay, it could be.
Like they break things up into pieces.
Yeah. It could be, yeah, it could be, but he says it's coming from Arabic. And Rav Hirsch says, actually, it comes from the word chavar, from chet bet resh. A soft chet can be a hay, just like we know a hard hay can be a chet. Think Russians. Okay, those who come from Russia, I remember, off the subject, I remember when the Russian kids started coming back started coming in the 70s and 80s, and I remember there was this wonderful young man at Mosheva, and he really had learned tremendously, and he was davening for the Amud. Like for a kid from Russia to daven for the Amud was amazing. But he got up there, and he kept on saying, it sounded like Elokeinu v'Elokei Avotenu. Instead of saying the hey, it came out like Elokeinu v'Elokei Avotenu. It sounded like a hard sound. And Rachmanas, someone didn't chop that there's no H sound, and they were correcting him when he was saying it. The only way you can pronounce, like the way we say resh, which is the wrong way to say resh, or the way we say ayin, which is not the right way to say ayin. Okay, so they were correcting him because it was really, he was saying with the hay. It just, his hay didn't sound like our hay. It was much better than the people who have the oys in there, the diphthongs they throw and have no basis. But here we have the people, says Rav Hirsch, well, it's Chavrei Shemaim. It's Chavrei Shemaim, the people who are associated, the buddies with the heavens. Those people. They're the ones who are always fortune telling every month what's going to happen. Think about it. The people nowadays, the people into astrology, they say, oh, you were born, you're a Scorpio. Well, that means you're going to be this. Okay. And this is what's going to happen. That's what so he's mocking them, and he's saying to Bavel, go ahead and ask him. Hine hayu kikash eish suraftam. They are going to be like straw or stubble that when it is burnt, lo yatzilu et nafsham miyad lehava. They're not going to be able to save themselves from the fire, from the strong fire. Ein gachedet lachmam. There's not even going to be a coal that remains to warm themselves. Now, who is this referring to? According to Rashi, this is referring to the Babylonians in general. That after the destruction, that the Babylonians, there's nothing that's going to be left, except for what's at the University of Chicago and the Oriental Institute. According to the Radak, there's nothing going to be left of these magicians and the enchanters. Or Lashevet Negdo, there's not even going to be a fire. If you think about the imagery it has here, you burn straw and stubble, nothing remains after it's consumed. You burn wood, you can get charcoal. But you burn the stubble, it's quick, it's fast, fire is over, nothing remains. The destruction will be absolute. Ken hayulach asher yagat, so too will it be to you. The Ibn Ezra again says this is referring to the enchanters and all of those. So charayich minu urayich. Okay, this was your business from when you were young. Now, Hirsch has this beautiful piece. He says, what do you mean it was your business since you were young? We did talk about earlier that it had been something that had been going on. Yagat min urayich, you've been working at this since you were young. But what do you mean business since you were young? These magicians were making a good business out of it. Okay, they were making up their things. They were pretending to tell the truth and to give fortune, and they were raking it in the whole time. From when they were young, this has been a really good business. There's the commercial now on radio all the time about the Los Angeles fortune teller, some kind of business. Yeah, I've been listening to it on the radio all the time. Yeah, with a guarantee, right? There's a guarantee if it doesn't come true. If you don't know if this is the right one, call them up. They'll tell you everything you need to know. It's a really good business they had until that point. Ish le'evrotau, ein Moshiach. Okay, every man wandered to his own side. Okay, that ultimately, when the destruction will come, people are going to run to wherever they can run. They're going to try to escape. Ein Moshiach, but no one is going to save you, Bavel. Your destruction is absolute, and at that point, there's nothing more you can do. And with this, we're going to finish the parak this week. I'll see everyone next week. Bavel, we're not done with some of these curses that are going to go against some of the people who are on the other side. On that note, have a wonderful day.